Hi, everyone. My name is Mona Davids. I'm a contributor with Little Africa Bronx News. Thank you for joining us with this interview with His Excellency Jerry Matjila, the Permanent Representative of South Africa to the United Nations. Ambassador Matjila, thank you for joining us today.
Mona, thanks you to inviting me to your show and to our listeners too.
Thank you, sir. So, number one thing on everybody's mind, COVID-19, this coronavirus pandemic. Here in New York, you are here in New York, sir, at the United Nations. You see what we're dealing with and the measures that New York State Governor Cuomo, as well as New York City Mayor de Blasio, have implemented in the last couple of weeks. But also in South Africa, President Ramaphosa has implemented some serious stringent measures to combat the pandemic and to try to stop the spread of COVID-19. So, Ambassador, being that South Africa has officially implemented the most stringent measures, could you share with us a little bit what President Ramaphosa may have felt why he believed that it was necessary to implement such a stringent lockdown in South Africa?
Well, thanks very much. I think the president and the cabinet realized what happened in China, what is happening in Europe, what is happening in Americas, especially in the USA. And observe one thing, that the faster, the quicker, and the more robust measures you put into place, the better. So you can deal with the curve from very, very beginning. Because if you delay, you may not respond adequately and you may lose a lot of lives. So I think the thing was, it was lessons learned from these ongoing experiences elsewhere in the world. And therefore that South Africa ought to be ahead, effective, efficient, robust in its response. No debate, no this or that, just go to this pandemic because of the devastation it's done all over the world. So close the borders, so social distancing, so lockdown, so stop unnecessary activities like going to churches, like going to soccer, like going to stop those things. Let the people take a bit of pain now to enjoy in a month or so, then to enjoy now and mourn forever. So it was a very, very, I think, very timely, but also because we don't have a very highly robust health system all over in the continent. So South Africa may have to absorb a lot of people from the region, like you see testing from Botswana and other, they send this to South Africa and South Africa process and then send back the test. We have a very porous borders, free movement of people in and out, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique. So you really need to show that when you deal with this thing, nothing moves in or out, except for essential businesses. So secondly, because also we have learned from the ravages of HIV/AIDS that if you delay, you cause a lot of misery. We have learned also from the Ebola pandemic in West Africa, if you delay, it costs a lot. So these were the lessons that make us to move faster. And I think you can see the measures are paying well. The numbers are contained. There is ongoing tracking. They use mobile phone to track who met who, where is this person. They train thousands of tracking high-tech officials going around, at the same time mobilizing all the necessary health system services from the nursing professions, doctors, from the army, from every able person with a certified health giver is now in the front line. And in addition, they brought and trained these health workers to trace this. At the same time, they rev up production of essential medicine to make sure that the first responders first are well equipped, but the hospitals have necessary facility to deal with the virus. Because we know that Africa will come to South Africa, like we have seen before, that they will come to us and ask for help. So before that, we deal with this issue. We saw in Botswana also they imposed similar restrictive measures. Namibia also. We saw Zimbabwe. We see as far as Nigeria, everybody have taken very, very difficult measures. But we thought in South Africa, we have to be even more robust. Luckily, people are complying with these measures. It's a bit painful, but they can see we brought down the mortality rate. We're bringing down the rate of infection, but it's still too early. But I think we won't have a curve, a huge curve like we saw in China, in Spain, Italy, like we see in New York City and other states. That was the intention. Bring it down as much as you can. Be ahead of the curve. Be ahead of this pandemic, because you cannot debate more. You cannot be unambiguous. You have to be forthright, firm to deal with these issues. It's war. Now, in war, you don't debate a lot. You mobilize all the necessary capacities, capabilities, arsenal. You go to fight. That's exactly what happened in South Africa. It's a fight. And the commander-in-chief, Cyril Ramaphosa, is in charge. It's a fight. It's not a debating. It's not this or that. It's a fight. And hence these measures.
So, Ambassador, a couple of weeks ago, we know that South Africa repatriated, sent a chartered flight to China to return over 100 South African citizens that were stuck in China. And in today's New York Times, there's an article about South Africans stuck in the Maldives. There are articles in South African newspapers, South Africans stuck in Dubai, in Australia, all over the world. And I'd like to know, what is South Africa's Foreign Affairs, DIRCO, doing to assist South Africans abroad and to help them return to South Africa?
Thanks, Mona, for this question. You see, having put those measures at home, the question then was, how do South Africa live? Are they safe? Are they well? What are the circumstances, and what can we do as a government? Now, a number of them have been enrolled to the missions, embassies, consulate, and say, we'd like to go back home. And the government then went to the cabinet and said, we need to procure resources. We need to go and assist those who want to come home. So the first intake were those who were in Wuhan, in China. But also now, I think on the 8th, flying some out of Sao Paulo. Those who are in Peru, Argentina. Those South Africans who says, we want to come home. Now, unfortunately, even in the Americas, airspace are closed. So some managed to get into Brazil. So we're talking with host governments to say we have a number of South Africans who feel they want to go home. We know people come under different circumstances. That is a second issue we deal with. Once people are safe and well, and are at home as they want. So we are now having so far over 60 South Africans in the Americas who say want to go home. So by tonight, we should be giving the Brazilian authority the list of those South Africans, because you have to have the permit to leave them out. You know, it's very coordinated. And I know our South Africans also in Europe, in Mauritius, those emotions will be easier to pick up because they are nearer. It is those who are in several countries under lockdown. How do you fly them to one point to collect? Because you cannot be shuttling around. You have to go to one point. But it's a human phase of this, because we need solidarity, we need care, we need compassion, we need to take care of one another. It's a very painful thing. It's a very difficult thing. But we should not lose, Mona, we should not lose this human face, this human compassion, that after all, we are together in this thing, we're the family in this thing, and therefore we need to extend helping hand of those who may be in very difficult circumstances, especially if they want to go home, we left them home to be with their loved ones, because nobody knows when this will end. And nobody knows circumstances where people are, where they are looked after, like we look after them at home.
Yes.
Mona, charity begins at home. So you have to look after your own people. So South Africans, wherever they are, they're advised to go and contact consulate, embassies, if you want to go home. And then we then send the data to the government and say, in country A, we have so many South Africans who really want to go home, want to come home. So then the government go through the cabinet process, procure means to lift these people home. So that is the human compassion of these very difficult phase and the circumstances of coronavirus pandemic.
Ambassador Matjila, thank you for that explanation. You are here at the United Nations. I'd like to know, and our viewers and listeners would like to know, what is the United Nations doing to support African governments in combating the coronavirus pandemic?
You know, Mona and your viewers, the African Union has a presence within the UN system here in New York. We have a mission at corner 47 2nd Avenue. It is called the African Union Observer Mission, United Nations. It's led by a fully fledged ambassador, Ambassador Fatima Mohammed. Now, she has a secretariat with translation facilities and an auditorium where the African heads of missions, ambassadors meet regularly to debate issues for Africa, including, in these circumstances and extraordinary times, the coronavirus. So the African permanent representative ambassadors met and discussed this matter. Luckily, the president of the General Assembly of the United Nations is an African, Professor Bandi Mohammed. So he sits at the helm, at the apex of the United Nations now. So we couldn't have such a good opportune time when we have one of our own at the helm who then says, let's do something for Africa. So Secretary General Guterres, who is so sympathetic, so cooperative, and so supportive to African cause, generally speaking, understanding the need for support for the African countries and other developing countries, launched last week a global solidarity fund. He appealed to the United Nations member states. He appealed to businesses, philanthropists, and other governments to contribute generously to this global fund that he believes, if well supported, can come very handy in supporting the very fragile and sometimes very, very weak health systems in the continent. When the continent is prepared to deal with coronavirus. Remember, not most of the countries are like South Africa, where they can tap in local businesses and other resources. So we have a very fragile, especially countries in conflicts or emerging out of conflict. So we still have a lot of, something like 17 fragile countries in country. So if you think, like, take South African Republic, take Libya, what coronavirus will do if there is no assistance, it will cause havoc. And up to date, hundreds of millions of dollars have been contributed to that fund.
Wow.
3 days ago, Secretary General Guterres had a teleconference with President Ramaphosa, who is the current chair of the African Union. And part of the discussions was, what is this can we do to mobilize resources to assist those African countries? You recall last week there was a virtual G20 leaders conference organized by the King of Saudi Arabia. Again, during that meeting, President Ramaphosa appealed to the G20 countries not to forget developing countries or those fragile states with underdeveloped health systems. So there is a general global solidarity campaign going on to avail resources to deal with African countries. Some of them have also developed, small solidarity funds internally. Like in South Africa, we have our own solidarity fund. Nigeria have, some have. But we believe that the UN system will come very, very handy. And you can see also now from the World Bank, IMF, they are saying we're going to relax we're going to postpone the repaying of debt so they can then deal with the pandemic. I think that comes very handy. Some says we can avail small resources, to help you to boost up your local system and procure necessary health devices for first responders. So you see there is a lot of money now going to help first responders, nurses, doctors, and all those health systems to buy protective clothes, equipment for testing. So there is a resource already flowing, and the UN is at the forefront of this mobilization of global solidarity for Africa in particular, but also, of course, for the developing countries. So I think it's a very good thing to do. And I think as African ambassadors, we always respond to say to these countries, like we say to Norway, we say to Canada, we say to Ireland, we say to all of them, thank you very much for the generous support, because that's what we need now. Solidarity is compassion. After all, coronavirus knows no boundaries. So we need to be on this end together, fully committed continuously to deal with a virus. So the African ambassadors at the United Nations using this infrastructure are very, very active in helping mobilize the resources. But South Africa, because you are the chair, we're the head of the Union this year, we're even more in the forefront. And President Ramaphosa is really lobbying. Actually, we even also have the Solidarity Fund in Africa, launched by President Ramaphosa and then Commissioner Faki, Chair Commissioner Faki, to say, we also Africans, let's tap in our resources. Like we did, we had a fund to fight Ebola. And so it was one of the substantial contributors from our telecommunication companies, from our pharmaceutical companies. So we have been at the forefront as South Africa, looking outside our borders to say, we need to extend a helping hand to our brothers, to our sisters in other parts of the continent and assist them where we can, like, as I say, availing our laboratories for them to can test, verify, and then send back the test accuracy so that they're able to know who's positive, who must be assisted. So that's African solidarity at its best, and UN have then joined this African solidarity.
Wow, that is wonderful to hear. On behalf of us Africans who are here, who are far away from home, we're really appreciative of what the United Nations is doing, as well as our own African Union is doing to support the African governments. Ambassador Matjila, thank you so very much for taking the time to speak with us and share this valuable information with the African community here in New York City. We thank you for your service, not just to South Africa, but to the continent as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mona, to your listeners, and please take care. Please observe the necessary rules. You've been also listening to Mayor de Blasio, and we're listening to Governor Cuomo. They're also guiding us. That's why we are teleworking from home, because we respect the local authorities and the scientists in New York. And so our own brothers, sisters in African community, we're investing together. let's stay together, let's be compassionate to each other, extend solidarity, we will emerge. This also will come to an end. And thank you so much for having me in your program.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ambassador. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.